And again, welcome everybody to, what is this, April 5th, April 5th. And spring breaks are kind of, so I know Ellen is done with hers, and Katie, yours is done. Yep. Anybody still have spring break to go? So they all seem to be winding down. Okay, well, let's go around, introduce ourselves, and then if there's anything that you'd like to talk about. I'm juggling. If you see me bobbing up and down, it's because I'm watching the chewing baby teeth of my dog here. And so, hi everybody, I'm Susan Walker, and I will turn it over to Greta.
Hi, I'm Greta Nelson, and I'm a parent educator in Cambridge, Isani. Glad to be here. I've been gone for a couple weeks. Glad to be back. I will turn over to Nancy.
And I am Nancy Trahey. I work as a parent educator and home visitor for Albany area schools. And if we have time, I'd love to hear what people think about this topic of estrangement. It was brought up on the Facebook page, and it's a topic that comes up from time to time in my one of my larger classes where people have been in the class for a long time. And so I'm always looking for new trends and things that they want to discuss. And this topic, like I said, comes up in that area. So if we have time. And I turn it over to Katie.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name's Katie Anderson, and I am the parent educator and the administrative assistant for our program here in Jordan. And I don't really have anything today, so I will pass it on to Ellen if she's ready.
I'm ready. I just dumped I just dumped my water bottle. Oh, I didn't have the lid on, and I dumped it. And I made a mess. Hi, Ellen Hafner, parent educator, Northfield. I have no questions today. Who hasn't gone yet? Katie, did you go? Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I did think of two questions actually while you were saying. I'm a parent educator, home visitor at Osseo Schools. Question one relates more towards traditional parent education. Question two, this might not be a forum. So question one is, with my new Spanish classes, I'm trying to manage having a core group of moms who've been with me for about a year, mixing in with highly mobile population. And so every week my class looks different. And I have these moms who really want like some meaty parent ed stuff. And then just this new group every time, right? And I'm trying to balance, how do I create an engaging curriculum for this group that's like super condensed and never goes more beyond one class period, because the next class is going to look totally different, and I'm really struggling with that. So anyone who has advice on that. Second question is maybe not for this group, but just wondering if anyone has domestic violence resources that are geared towards the whole family. What I'm seeing a lot is this continual pattern with the families I'm working with in home visiting, specifically the families in shelter. There's a lot of domestic violence. Dad's kicked out. That's really not what mom wants. So she keeps bringing them back in. So then the whole family gets evicted from the shelter, and then they're homeless. So my question is, and it's come up amongst all of our home visitors, is what supports are out there for men who are enacting domestic violence? Like, how do we support them in this whole setting? And I'm wondering if anyone has resources for that.
Laura, who do you call on? Yeah.
Who is it? Sandy, did you go? Carissa didn't go?
I think Sandy and I haven't gone. I can go, and then I know Sandy's in a place where she can talk, but I'm Carissa. I'm parent ed in Moundsview. Yeah, I don't really have anything pressing today, so my screen just did something weird. So Sandy, I think you're the last one if you're in a place where you can talk.
Sure. I am Sandy Coulter, parent educator and home visitor in Fairmont, Minnesota. And I don't have any pressing questions for today and will just mostly be trying to listen because I am driving right now. So thanks for letting me listen and hear your wisdom.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, if you want, if you'd like, I can send the transcript of our chat because I know you probably can't see you know, well, no, I don't want you looking at the chat while you're driving. So, but if you would like, if we provide any resources or anything like that in chat, I can send that to you. So, wow.
Thank you. That sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. Great. Well, great topics. Should we circle back first to family and estrangement? I didn't see the original Facebook post about that, but Nancy, I'll return it to you. So if you can, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Unmute. This whole topic kind of came to my attention when we found out we were going to be grandparents, and I read a book by the gal from Leslie Stahl, right? I think that's her name, from 60 Minutes. She researched and wrote a book about grandparenting, current grandparenting, and she had an entire chapter on family estrangement, and it also played and the data behind what's happening currently, and then also in some of the other chapters as well. And that about that same time, the parents in my classes started talking about, some of them felt that they were having struggles with setting boundaries, and that's kind of what the Facebook post, I was going to try to pull it up, referred to. You know, young parents describing difficulty in setting boundaries with their extended family. And it seems that it has grown. I'm not sure why. I don't think that I understand exactly why. Is it because we as at the grandparent age, and I said we because I'm a part of that age, and we were very involved in our children's lives as they were growing up, you know, more than our parents were. We went to all their games. We helped with all kinds of things at the school, way more than our parents did. And so is it kind of a carryover from that? Our generation has an expectation of being more involved, and the younger generation is saying, hang on a second, you know, that's not what we would like. But I did just see, and I'm trying to remember yesterday, a little data slide. I'll try to find it and put it in the chat if I can track it down and when somebody else is talking about grandparenting. And trying to think, I think it was done by the American Academy of Pediatrics, about grandparent involvement in their grandchildren's lives in terms of childcare and child rearing has grown also. So that could be another reason why. Yeah, it might have been AARP. I'll see if I can find it, Susan. And it's as many grandparents are doing 14 hours or more of care of their grandchildren as childcare providers. So, you know, yeah. So but I think the Facebook post really kind of was more focused on parents wanting to know ideas for setting boundaries. Does that make sense? Do any of you have thoughts about that? Here we go. It was a parent educator who said, I have a lot of families this year expressing frustration with grandparents/family. Does anyone have information on setting boundaries with families that they would be willing to share?
I'm glad that you brought it up. You know, I saw that's a post I did see. I didn't see anything on estrangement. And I'm glad you brought that up, since the topic I'm doing Thursday is a follow-up to the fall session on boundaries. And so, and while my intention was more around parenting educators and their own work on boundaries, and inevitably it'll probably come up too about helping parents set boundaries. So I'm glad that you brought it up, Nancy. It seems like leap though between setting boundaries and estrangement, to me, anyway. I mean, was that part of the people in your I mean, it almost would seem like estrangement is the point that somebody gets to when the boundaries are so are so completely ignored that the only recourse that somebody sets is, I've asked you all of these times to do X, you haven't done that, and so I'm just cutting you off, or we have to take a break. And so the other seems more like a preventive of whatever.
True, but that's the relationship, right? And maybe estrangement is a term that's being used that really sounds to us pretty drastic. But so the parents in my class, when they were discussing this, said the number of, for example, and I'm not on TikTok. So but they were talking about the sheer number of TikTok posts, videos, I don't know, what do you call them? Entries by people referring to, and the people in my class, you know, they say this and they look at me and they go, sorry, but mostly complaining about mothers-in-law kind of thing, you know, and the derision factor with that mother-in-law is involved.
When you say that term, I just think back to 30 years ago, and we were saying that same term, mother-in-laws, but do you think social media has amplified the difficulty of this stage of life? I don't know. I wonder where the statistics are on it and what we're hearing more and more because of social media. Not to say it's not a non-issue that we shouldn't engage in, but is it hyped up at all? That's just my first I wonder. Does that speak to that?
Yeah, because boundaries, like you're saying, Susan, boundaries is a topic we've talked about a number of times, you know, especially in the holiday season. Estrangement seemed more drastic to me, but apparently it's growing. There are a lot of people that either aren't having the conversations, you know what I mean? They're jumping to setting up stronger boundaries before they've even tried to have those hard conversations, challenging conversations.
I think it's related to like resilience, maybe. I don't know, or fortitude.
So maybe to sorry,
those are good questions.
Yeah. Maybe to focus this discussion, we should talk about resources we've used to help parents with the preventative part of setting boundaries and leave estrangement for another time.
I would appreciate that, I guess. I mean, when I hear estrangement, I mean, it's a very serious term. I mean, it's a very serious severing of a relationship that is kind of but I completely hear you, Nancy, because in my own social media feed, I see the word estrangement passed around a lot. And as the parent of an adult child, it hurts my heart because it's almost a term of, I can't get along with this person. I don't have the tools to get along with this person. I am going to estrange myself from this person. And it's just like, really? Like there's some other, you know, I mean, there are true cases of estrangement where violence and, you know, all kinds of things are involved and self-protection and that sort of thing. But if we're talking about sort of the normative range of challenging relationship dynamics, and especially with I mean, there's the whole literature too on individuation and separation in young adulthood from parents and things like that, you know. I mean, that's just hard, right? Which is very different than this idea of this person I'm cutting this person off, or this person has cut themselves off from my life and they are estranged from me and my family or whatever. So, yeah.
So have any of you found resources you like to use in those discussions about setting boundaries with extended family? Oh, okay. Somebody had something in the feed here. Laura, you said you saw a video this week.
I can't find it, but it came up. And if I could, I'd share it. Secondly was, I know it's come up in parent ed before. There is some good book, and I'm gonna have to look it up, that one of the parent eds recommended on boundaries, that we talked about earlier this year. But I can't recall the name of it right now.
Yeah, Susan, I think you mentioned a book during your fall presentation, and I know I have it. I haven't read it yet, but I plan to this summer, so what is that one called? Do you remember?
Nope, but I will, but somebody actually referred to it in that feed. So Nancy, if
Okay.
you look in that discussion on Facebook, and that book is mentioned, because I know I liked it when somebody brought it up, because it's one that was on the list that I shared.
I'll look for it and add it to the chat.
Okay. And I think Ellen might be out of the room, but I believe she's got a lesson that she shared with parents.
And then also, I don't know if it was in that same feed on family education, Friends of Family Education on Facebook, but Sarah Hardy offered to share some of her materials on boundaries. And I have those. So Nancy, I can share those with you too, if you want.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So I'm curious with, whether you have a lesson or whether you have resources, what is the conversation like in your classes about this topic? I mean, what challenges are parents coming forward, if they are at all? You know, because I think of, again, like I mentioned, I know in Latina families, like, and in Asian families, right? I mean, the interconnectedness of the family. I mean, you know, the grandmother comes out to live with Korean families, comes out to live with the family for the full year, right? During pregnancy and then that year afterwards. And so it's almost a norm of that kind of expectation, and that kind of both expectation by the new parent as well as the expectation of the grandparent. So I think it's not all families, of course, right? But anyway, I am more curious for my own knowledge, what kind of conversations come up in your classes about this, and what seems to be the problem, honestly, for parents. And I'm not minimizing it at all. I'm just curious what challenges that they're feeling from the people who they are maybe are grandparents or whoever. So what challenges are they feeling, and what challenges are they having in terms of knowing what they want and asking for it?
Am I the only one here who's had parents express this? No.
No.
Okay. Some of the rest of you give some, so I can put some of this in the chat.
I know that I remember this coming up a lot during the holidays, especially when you're going to your in-laws or you're going to families and they're critiquing your parenting, or your child needs a nap, and you're going to honor that and say, we can be there at this time. And then mother-in-law is angry. It's like, I feel like the holidays is a huge time for that stuff to come up. So just the discussion, the moms are kind of supporting each other, and sometimes they just need to talk about it and, vent. Spouses being supportive is another thing, like, the husband, oh, well, he won't say anything to his mom, or, like it's that kind of stuff that I mostly hear, I guess. But definitely it is an issue for sure.
I would agree with Katie. That's what I experienced too, usually around holidays is where it comes up in conversations. The boundary, a couple of things that come up and families have appreciated, like if there's now I have 15 things in my head. I'm sorry, just a second. The grandparents class, I hear They tell me what food I have to feed them. They survived. They survived with what I fed them. I'm fine. You know, they'll be fine. That sort of thing comes up. So food, along with, you know, a boundary around naps and all those things. Sorry, this is really random because it's all coming in fast now. One thing that a parent gave that I thought was really encouraging was, if you want your parents to know something that you're studying or you're listening to or you're really wanting to do, give them the information. You know, if you have something, to give that to them ahead of time, like especially if it's going to be around holidays, then say, we're working on this and we really would like your input. So that's like a strategy that the parents have come up with on their own, and they really appreciate that opportunity. And then, so we even will brainstorm or find resources ad hoc, you know, well, what would that be? Where would you go to find that? And how could I get that to them? And those sorts of things. It was something that comes to mind, Nancy. I don't know. It's not like a website. Sorry, I don't have it.
So Greta, just to clarify, so you're encouraging the families you have in class to share with their own families ahead of time. Okay, I just wanted to, that's great.
Yeah, sorry.
Like that, yeah. Mhm.
And then just ask for help to do it. Hey, we're really wanting to do this. Can you help us? You know, that kind of approach versus you better or else or something. I don't know. You know, just how it's presented, I think is what they were talking about. And firm enough to say, set that boundary. And if this doesn't happen, if it's something that important, then we are going to leave. But they encourage each other around the table, and I don't know.
Yes.
I feel like food definitely too, Greta. I mean, the holidays for sure, but like this year, maybe especially food and sugar, especially just kind of is the one thing that keeps sort of swirling and swirling. They get juice, they get candy, and grandparents won't stop spoiling with sugar, where families are really not wanting to do that anymore. Or like even like sometimes a full-on allergy or sensitivity where grandpa will still pour the kid a glass of milk and they're allergic to that. Like, Dad, please do not. And kind of grandparents having a hard time with that kind of food stuff. I have a grandma that she came all last year. She's delightful. She's with a granddaughter and then the little brother. She's come this year, and I can't remember how it came up, but it just came up this week. And she was kind of like, she's got boys, so she's that mother-in-law, which is, you know, sort of different too. I've got boys. I don't want it to be different, but it is. And she kind of said to all the moms in the group, like, just tell us, like, you know, and all mother-in-laws don't necessarily respond as openly as she is probably going to, but she was like, I wish that they would just tell me. And I think that goes into your, like, giving the information ahead too, Greta, like, just, I think sometimes parents expect grandparents to know and understand things that are different, and they don't know and necessarily understand, but if they just tell them, I think more grandparents are going to be willing to go along with it. And it was an interesting thing too. Part of the reason she wished her daughters-in-laws would just tell her is, rather than like having them tell her sons to then tell her, is that she then felt kind of scolded instead of being given this information of this is how we want it done. She felt scolded instead, and she didn't love that piece of it. So I thought that was an interesting point from the grandparent side of things.
When you say about juice, it's not that long ago that there was a milk bottle and a juice bottle. How many of you remember juice bottles? Like, you give a juice bottle to your infant every couple hours, and outside of that, it's not been that long, and some of us know that experience, right? So new information. Yeah, it's important.
So I appreciated, Nancy, in your in the thread, because you know because this is relationship stuff, right, between the parent and the grandparent or whoever is on the other side of the boundary thing. And And I think in classes, we can hear mostly the parents and, I'm so frustrated with this person, right, that they are doing X. And I appreciated your offering the Leslie Stahl book. And I think in your post, you even said something about here it is from the grandparents' perspective, right? And I think that's always really good for a healthy relationship and communication is sort of understanding, well, why does this person want to insert themselves so much into my life, right? And from my own understanding of the boundaries, the challenges a lot of time is that ambiguity around roles, right? And this again is part of that whole separation, individuation that happens, in young adulthood, and how tough it is. It's tough for young adults or adults to kind of extricate themselves into their own unique identity and see themselves in their own identity. But it's also really tough for parents, as their kids, are as they become, because then it's just like, well, what is my role now? Like, because society told me until this kid was 18 or whatever, like this is what I was supposed to do. And now in adulthood, now they have kids. Well, I know about parenting and I want to be supportive and I want to be helpful and, all of these things. But how do I do that with what they are trying to do? Right. And I think it's a very hard thing to do without communication, without like having that good communication about this is my role and this is what I expect, because this is what I want to be able to do. And as long as you're doing XYZ, it's like hard for me to learn this, or I would really like you to be more involved because I feel really alone and I really value your expertise, whatever it is, right? So I was really glad that you had sort of posted the grandparent side of it. Greta, I'm interested because I know you have the grandparenting classes. Do they ever talk about this?
Yeah, they do. And there's a variety. There's those that do daycare full time, and there's one that lives with their children, and there's those that do daycare every once in a while, and some that just bring them to class that day, and this is their interaction time. So they all have a very unique situation, but it's all about discovering what is this grandparenting thing, just what you were saying, Susan, the identity and the roles, and what is that? And would you guys agree that time has changed our cultures? Some cultures are really still strong, and you might be coming from a family system that has really defined not well defined, I don't know, defined roles, right? But many families I find do not have these roles defined at all. And so it's really unique for each one. And the discovery of that is tricky because across the table, we like go, well, I would never. And well, I do all the time, and so it's so different. And it's fascinating social science kind of thing to think about how our global world has changed definition of roles and expectations and traditions like we talk about. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful. Yeah.
Well, I think we've created a good list. And I've opened some of these things and I'll look at them closer later. And thank you for this discussion on this. Yeah, Greta.
Yeah, 0 to 3 grandparenting, that's kind of what I use for kind of my baseline of what we do in grandparent class, along with other activities and baby books and all this other stuff we do. But that 0 to 3 has a really nice one is if you have struggles, it's like, how do I have a conversation with my adult child? And a difficult conversation. There's a like a form or just kind of a scripts even that are in there too. And that's really helpful. And then also another lesson on, how do I problem solve difficult conversations with my children, my adult children, so it has some things there you might find helpful.
I will definitely look at that. Thank you.
Is that 0 to 3, Greta?
Yeah, that's all 0 to 3 under
Great.
grandparenting. It does take the perspective of the grandparent is now the custodial, the superintendent of this child, so some of that is in there.
Right.
So they do a little of both. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's like a whole really interesting dynamic for the grandparents who become custodial parents, and sort of legally, and I think, and advocacy wise. And I just remember all these grandparents. There was the Brookdale Foundation years ago used to be specific on used to be have a whole specific thing on grandparents raising grandchildren, and just the plight that they face in terms of they're overseeing, but they don't have a lot of legal rights, and they can't get kids' school records, and all kinds of things. And then from a personal side of it, how it's so disruptive to their own lives, and a lot of times it happens when it was not at all planned, and they had a very different future for their own retirement planned, and then but they step up because there's nobody else, and and sometimes the adult child is incarcerated, sometimes it's drug stuff, sometimes it's mental health, whatever it is, right? But I really appreciate your bringing those up, because I think even without sort of an extreme situation like that, those templates can be modified for more every sort of more I guess average or normative relationships. Yeah.
And I agree with you, Susan, about the difference culturally. Different cultures view the multi-generational involvement in different ways. And so obviously that would need to be consideration. As you were mentioning that, it was occurring to me that this class doesn't have anyone who is, anything other than, white.
Yes, in all my classes, there's not this problem because they're all immigrants and the roles are very specific.
Mhm.
And even if they have conflict, they're not going to bring it up because you just don't do that.
Not interesting. I find that fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. Different
It
cultures.
makes me think about the whole "it takes a village" and then sort of the lament of the last, quite a while now, of where is this village that everyone keeps speaking of, right? And yet we're having this conflict or whatever, difficult relationships with the closest people in our village, right? So I don't know, it's also tricky.
And there seems to be a generational expectation amongst white women that you have to figure it out on your own. And so then
Well, and I'm struck by the irony, because I hear parents telling me they really want the support in terms of childcare from other family members. But then it's like those family members, whoever they are, grandparents, aunt and uncle, they're like walking a tightrope.
Right. I mean,
'Cause-
yeah, sorry, Nancy, but exactly as you were talking before, I can see that there's kind of mixed messages too. So the grandparent is like, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. On the other hand, back off and let me, and so it is two ways sometimes. Yeah.
and
Well,
can I just say, this sounds a little bit about like what we're going through as teachers. Like parents want to give us their children to educate them, but I have these rights. I want to dictate the way it's going to be done. There's just something shifting here.
That's
There's not a
interesting.
communal sense of we're in this together. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because I have not been teaching my early preschool for a couple of years now, but that is interesting, right? They want to hand over so much. I'm generalizing, and I hate that when people do that, but you know what I mean? The message I was getting was, well, I need for you to help me with potty training, finishing the potty training for my 3 or 4-year-old in the classroom, but yet what they want to hang on to very tightly other thing. It's.
Do you wonder if some of this, Susan, I'm going to ask for your research mind. Do we have data on, because it makes me think of the generation, this is a generation that normative to have daycare. I mean, normative. There's a few of us here on the call that grew up when it wasn't the norm it was norm to be cared for at home by your mother or some, right? Okay. Generally speaking, obviously. I wonder if this is a part of a generation raised in a culture where, my mom would never have said to anybody, are you potty training my kid? But now they need them to be helping potty train their kids because they are there 40 to 60 hours a week. So the
Right.
roles have changed. And so I wonder if this is somewhat a part of that role identity thing that we were talking about earlier. Like, who is responsible? And I wonder if that plays into the expectations then of young parents of young children, trying to figure out what do I want from my parents now, or the parents of this, or the grandparents of these children. I don't know. Does that fit in there somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I can look for the research on it, but just my gut is with Laura's comment. I think that from the 1980s on, I mean, it's always this for every good thing, there's a challenge, right? And so in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, roles for women were very defined, right? And then feminism and equal rights amendments and women returned to work, and that was great, right? And then, but there still wasn't adequate childcare, so there was a lot of promotion for childcare and for more birth to three programs and things like that. To this day, it still is horrible. Right. I mean, for working women, the availability and the quality and the cost of childcare is still very individualized and very horrible. And you basically continue to get what you pay for if you have the resources to pay for it. And so, but through that, right, through then like into the 90s and on, I think for a lot of women, especially working women, right? Or, I mean, this thing about their roles is very ill-defined. I used to show, there was a Similac, for those of you who know baby formula, there's a Similac commercial that I used to show my undergraduate class. And it sort of was a 2-minute version of like the mommy wars. And so there was like the corporate moms that showed up in their black suits, right? And they had their phones out, and they're like judging the moms that are, like they don't work, right? And then there's the very natural mothers that, have the pouch or the carriers for their babies, and stuff. There was even dads. There's sort of like there's like 6 different factions of mothers. And then at one point a baby stroller goes rogue, right? And they all like go after it. And it sort of like comes, the end is sort of like, when we all care about babies, our whatever it is, our identities don't matter. But it's still, and then I think social media really has, I'm actually writing a paper. One of the papers I'm writing now for the UN is more about climate change and families and technology, but the focus that I'm taking, because there isn't like a real close direct relationship, but is more about social media and misinformation and how social media really has polarized, and who those influencers are on social media that contribute to the polarization. And even as I glance through, again, because I follow a lot of people on mental health and that sort of thing through social media, I do see, and this is maybe why I'm sensitive around that word of estrangement. So I've seen this trend, almost like this division towards parents of, and using that word estrangement. And so I'm with Laura. I do think there's a lot of role ambiguity, a lot of, people have not been given good communication tools in their relationships to navigate this, kind of new world. And then you have, folks that are so overwhelmed between work and family and everything else, and that, women do, that I think that they're relatively isolated. And so a lot of their communities are on their phones. Right. And so when what little time they have, they get from following different podcasts or different influencers or other moms or whoever, right? It's their tribe. And that tribe just reinforces certain ideas, and also can reinforce sort of that lack of confidence, or, really, I would call them pretty shitty tools for survival, because it's really more like that feeling of we're all in this together. And here's some nice phrases that are going to help you feel like you're not alone, but they're not good tools. They're not good tools for communication. They're not good tools for relationships. And so, sorry, you can tell I'm on a rant, but
Can I say the other side for you so you can kind of just feels like, I feel like I want to empower moms to curate exactly what they want to understand with good research-based social media and whatever. I think that stuff's out there, but to feel like you can control it and be watchful of the man behind the curtain pushing certain things your way and not knowing where that's coming from is important.
Yep.
So I feel like I want to empower those groups because that is their reality at some level. And
Right.
how much do we weigh it, right? And where it's feeding, what are we putting in? So I agree with you totally, Susan. I feel like I want to, if this, then this, right? This is happening, and I want you to curate it. I want you to be empowered. I don't know.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, Greta, because that's the educator side of it, right? So when the parents, and this little thing that I'm doing for the UN, I mean, that's like the family part of the family role is when whoever is being influenced by misinformation about climate change, right? One of the roles of family and one of the roles of professionals in schools is to help people have more critical perspective about the social media. And I too love your idea about like the term to curate their social media, to really have a good hard look at it, because the other side of it are these tech companies that have these algorithms that are all they're doing is feeding you what they think you want to see. And so if you're reading something and you like it, well, you're going to get a whole lot more of that versus going, I don't want to just see that. I also want to see this. But unless there's an action by the viewer, that they're just going to keep because they think this is what's going to hook you. Yeah. Yep. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
I would love to get to Laura's questions.
It's okay. We can forward it to another time.
That's what I said. I really,
This was fascinating.
We have meeting discussions.
It's a great topic, but Laura, I do have both of those. I'm going to be here next week. I know. So Carissa, you're going to be at Menafee. I would assume, Laura, are you going to be at Menafee? You're not going to be there. Okay. And Sandy may still be driving, but what we'll do is, Laura, if you can come back next Friday, we'll do your questions first. And then hopefully there will be other non-Menafee people that will be, in fact, or those of you who are maybe, I don't know, I guess that's during lunch. Well, if lunch sucks, I'm kidding. You know, like go sit in your car.
Actually,
for the introverts that want to get away from all the people and go to the hotel room.
Actually, it's during workshop session D.
Oh,
okay.
That goes all the way
don't
to.
like your selections for D. Get on chat. Yeah.
Well, regardless, we'll record it. And even if it's a conversation between myself and Laura, it'll be a great conversation. So, well, thank you, everybody. This has been great. It'd be good to have a video to be able to post on our channel. I'll see some of you Thursday. Yay! Laura, I'll see you Friday. And Carissa,
I wish I could meet you all next year when I'm not overwhelmed.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe can you come to the retreat? Here, I'll stop the camera. So you're